This fantastic technical issues. Welcome back to part 2 of the franchise show on Tuesday, the 13th of January. If you are here, please pop in a message to let us know that you can see this. That would be fantastic. We will start again to a degree today. We're going to make an introduction to 2 people who have joined us for the show. First of all, Danny Wareham. Danny, welcome for the second time.
Yeah, this counts as an extra stamp in the book, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Now you've got 4. So give another introduction to yourself.
Harvey, just before we get into that, I'm on LinkedIn and it's not doing anything. Okay. It's just looping still.
All right. Well, for the LinkedIn fans out there, my apologies. And if you're on YouTube, then we're all good on YouTube. So thank you to Simon. He may well be our audience guest for today. We will find out, and we will be back next week on LinkedIn. I think with that in mind, let's just get straight in. Oh, hang on. Oh. I think we are on LinkedIn. Okay, fantastic. Well, look, I think we're all good. Okay. We are going to officially start again. So welcome everybody to the franchise show. We are starting a little late today because we had some technical issues, but this is the franchise show and this is where we get under the hat of all things franchising. It's great to see everybody here. This is a live show, and look, you can tell it's live because it all went wrong. And of course, because it's a live show, please pop in your comments, say hello as you all are now, and get involved in our topic. Now, today the topic is franchise work culture, and we've got a couple of fantastic people to talk about that, who have already introduced themselves, but we're going to get them to introduce themselves again because it was lovely. So first of all, we're going to go to Danny. Danny, first of all, welcome to the franchise show. Most people will know you. You are a 3rd-time returning guest, I believe. So if you could give a little reintroduction to yourself and to the subject of work culture. This is all good.
So I am claiming it as my 4th now that we've had to restart. So my name's Danny Wareham. I'm an organizational psychologist, and I specialize in culture, or technically social dynamics. How do people relate to each other? What are the behaviors of groups? The kind of too long didn't read version is happy bees make tasty honey. If we have the right culture, the right support, the right direction, the right leadership, then performance becomes a side effect of that.
Excellent. Fantastic introduction, and it's always a pleasure to have you with us. And the same thing goes to you, Neil. Again, most people know Neil, of course, from Gather, one of our lovely supporters. But give a little introduction to yourself. And you and I talked about having this as a subject, and perhaps a little bit as to why you feel trying to discover what your work culture is and why, if that's important, why you think that's an important thing to do.
Thanks, Harvey. As you know, I'm the founder of Gather, and we use our plan. Oh, yep, nice, I'm wise. We use our platform to help with engagement, to understand both internally and externally how businesses are perceived, to move them from good to great. What we're talking about specifically today is work culture, which is why we have Danny here as our subject matter expert. And what we're trying to say with the Gather platform is how you can evidence your success or know when you're not winning, and where you're not winning, and how you can change that so you are winning. That's pretty much where the Gather platform comes in, but in a multitude of ways, which I won't go into today. But it's a great subject matter. And as you said about the quiz that you kindly sent out, and thanks to all those that responded to it, and they could see how quick and easy and engaging that was too. Thank you again to all those who responded, and we can release some of that data today, that analysed data, so that'd be interesting for discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to get into that. So in case people aren't aware, what we've done is we have run a short quiz all about work culture. Neil was going to share some of the results of which hopefully will inspire you to get involved in this conversation about a really important subject. I mean, culture is so important in any business, particularly in our franchise businesses. I believe that the QR code that is by the lovely Gather logo will take you to that particular quiz. So do scan that. But look, let's get into the subject today. We're going to start with perhaps Neil revealing a few of the facts and the questions that we asked. So Neil, over to you on this. Perhaps you could surprise us with a little. Go on.
Okay, all right. Well, I won't take too long on it, but what I'm hoping is this, the audience will jump in with their agreed opinions.
One at a time.
Yeah, okay. So let's start at the top. And the first question was, do you think a work culture is something that needs to be implemented and monitored and managed in the workplace? A complete 100% success, which is great. Bear in mind, I spoke to only a person today who was saying that some of the owners of businesses they know only do this as a tick box exercise and don't want to know about the data, because then they'd have to do something with the results. I mean, it's just like a head in the sand technique. But moving on.
I mean, let's pause on that one for a moment, because I think it's a really interesting one, and let's get Danny's thoughts on this. So do you think work culture needs to be monitored and implemented, was the question, wasn't it? Is that right? Yeah.
That's right.
And the result was 100% yes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Fantastic. Well, look, I mean, I certainly think it needs to be implemented. I'm sure Danny agrees on this one. But I think you're also right in the fact that it can be sometimes a box ticking exercise for people. You know, they think, yeah, this is our culture, or, you know, they've got up on the head office, their values put on the wall. But what does it mean, Danny, to have a real culture in a business? And does that come from values, do you think? Are you surprised by this figure as well, that everyone agrees that it's so important?
My pipeline is surprised, because if every business thinks this is important, then I think my pipeline would be a little bit fuller. I feel that part of the challenge is that culture as a kind of concept feels a bit sort of wishy-washy and abstract and ambiguous. So we tend to associate culture with, is this a great place to work? You know, is it vibes? Is some kind of feeling in the air? And that's not really what culture is. Culture is, what are the behaviors that happen naturally? Who leads when the leader is not in the room? Who tells people how to behave? And that's basically what culture is. So in order for a business owner or for a leader or a manager to say that they don't think culture is important, they're kind of implying that they don't want a great place to work. So of course they're going to say, yes, it's important. Now, it is important, but it's important because it's a strategic tool. If you've got a business that needs innovation, for argument's sake, then you want behaviors that make innovation more likely to happen. But if you've got reward mechanics that reward individual performance, then inadvertently that makes innovation a little bit tougher. It makes the behavior harder to manifest. If you then also have lots of other things, if you had your employee survey results and you announce them in a newsletter that says, we said you did, or you said we did, then unintentionally the language that you've got is saying that you've got separate teams. It's not one kind of group that all work together to innovate. It's a them and us. And it's these little micro things that we're attuned as humans to pick up on. We're tuned to know if something is safe, if we belong, if we conform. So when it comes to building culture or developing climate, which is kind of the short-term version of it, it's the intentionality around what are the signals that we send that say this behavior is acceptable. And the step before that is, what are the behaviors that are acceptable? So culture is not about creating a great place to work. It's about creating a place where great work is done.
I like that. I like that. I like that. I've written that one down.
You can have that one.
I think it's. I love when something is captured in a short statement like that. That really, it really means a lot. And it can change the way people think. Look, it's a great conversation. We're really getting into this. We're going to look more at this survey, not survey. Sorry, Neil. This. I'm really good. That's the first time I've done
dropped the ball.
It's for ages that I haven't done that. Let's welcome.
Inquisition. It's an inquisition.
Well, I hope not.
It's not. It was a lovely survey. It was a lovely survey. It's not a survey.
Welcome a few people who have joined us here, and let's call them persevered to be with us today on the show. So we'll start off. We've got the fantastic Simon Wise with us. He joined us initially on YouTube. So thanks for letting us know. We're now live on all of the platforms, so that's all good stuff. We've got Katrina Newman with us, and Katrina's put, hooray, glad to be back. It was fantastic to have you with us. Please drop in a comment and let us know what you think about work culture. What experiences have you had in your franchise organizations with culture? We've got the fantastic Tim Morris from The Bridge, one of our fantastic supporters. And he thought, phew, I thought you had disappeared into the ether. No, I'm back. Maybe it was the suspicious Wi-Fi at the Purple Palace, but we're all good. Fantastic to have you with us, Tim. Let us know if your experiences of culture can fit into this conversation. I know you've got a lot of experiences, Tim, of franchising, dealt with lots of businesses. So let us know your thoughts. We've got Simon who's come back with, hello, franchise friends. Don't get rid of me that easily. Well, that's good. We have a regular visitor, guest, supporter, and all-round lovely person, Penny Hopkinson, with us. Penny is, of course, an author, like Danny, actually, and we'll get on to that in a minute. But I always love to, and I always have promoted Penny's book. But do I get it the right way round is always a good question. Yes, I did today. There you go. So if you want to know about your manuals for your business, please talk to Penny, scan the QR code that's on the screen. And Penny has put, hello, Harvey and all franchise friends. Apologies for my late arrival. Well, look, Penny, it was actually perfectly timed. Because that's about when we went live. My Wi-Fi is playing up. Well, look, it's probably a day of that. So it's all good stuff. But look, fantastic to have everybody with us. Please pop in any thoughts you've got on culture and we will chat away about those. So let's get back into this. Neil, let's get back to this quiz that we did. I'll get it right this time. And have a look at another stat that's on that. What's the next one down on the list there?
Well, you know what? I was going to jump around a bit because I thought it segued nicely into the 100%.
Excellent.
That we talked about a moment ago.
I think we all think culture is important. We're just not quite sure what culture is. So what's the second question?
Well, I was going to mention the budget question because I thought that was really, should the network go down? At least we've talked about budget. So I thought I'd get this one out second. It's not the right order, but so I'll flip back up to the top in a second. But it was how much of your budget, I beg your pardon, it was how much you think good working culture affects your profits. Okay. And we gave a range of percentages from 0 to 20 in increments of 5. And I was astonished to see that 90% of the responses said 20% or more, with the remaining 10% saying 15 to 20.
Okay.
So, for me, that's great to see people recognize it. That is amazing, I find, because so many people don't think that work culture affects profits. That operate in the dark and in denial almost. And Danny's nodding his head frantically, going, "Yeah, completely." Happy beast.
What do you make of this one, Danny?
I have a bit of good news, bad news on this. The good news is absolutely affects your profits. It actually affects a lot more than just your profits. The bad news is it actually affects it a lot more than what you've just put. So there were some studies from Gallup last year. Gallup do a state of the workplace report every year. And for purposefully engaged employees, so where people feel that what they do matters and they're passionate about what they do because they're engaged in the work that they do, the profits are increased 2.5 times. So 250%, not 20%. They also have 62% fewer accidents. They have 40% less absenteeism. But my favorite study actually shows, because there's a lot of studies about the fiscal benefits for the business, but actually purposefully engaged employees are more likely to cut their neighbour's hedge. They're much more likely to put the bins out for the neighbours and donate their time to charity in their community. Unfortunately, the reverse is also true. So when people are disengaged at work, you take your work home with you. And there are links between disengaged employment and family breakdowns, domestic violence, and debt as well. And without getting too soapboxy, my view is that if you're an employer, you rent your employees from their families. You have a duty of care to return them in a better condition. So culture is not just about, wringing the flannel and getting extra money out and extra productivity and profits and so on. It's also, we make a difference in kitchens, classrooms. So we need to take it seriously and treat it like the strategic tool that it is, because it matters.
Absolutely. I like that employers rent their employees from their families and have a responsibility to return them in a better place.
Absolutely.
Again, it's something that's simple for someone to understand, that concept of nurturing a person and how important people are in business. Like you said about culture, Danny, lots of people say, yes, culture is important, but they don't understand what it is or how to do that. Yeah. And I think this is the same.
We've all had bad days at work and good days at work. When you have a bad day, you do go home in a bit of a, that's terrible. I'm gonna have myself a glass of wine. When you have a great day at work, what you do energizes you. You go home and suddenly you're bouncing around the house and let's take the wife out for dinner, and it matters. It matters.
Yeah, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. We've got a few comments coming in, so let's have a look at. We've got Daniel Higgins. Let's see what Daniel's got to say. He's put, do you think franchise owners should concentrate on one business? For example, in America, Chick-fil-A owners are usually only allowed to run one store, and they are always inside the store. This helps work culture rather than having multiple stores. Can you see the great service that this would make? Look, I think this is a really interesting one, actually, because I think this leads on to whether culture dilutes as a business grows, and how culture perhaps changes. If you started a business and you had one site and it was your baby, your idea, you'd be seeing every customer, culture would be directly connected to the values, good or bad, of the person who started it. But as you grow as a franchisee, or as you grow as a business individual, what's your thoughts on culture as businesses grow?
Well, I'd like to take that one. Thanks, Danny. Only because I was actually reading a blog from Darren Adair. I think you know him. He's on this show sometimes. Lovely guy, very, very knowledgeable, comes out with some amazing information. And he was supporting this about, owning your business and being there and meeting your customers and being behind your staff, which I fully support. But as you just said there a moment ago, once you get past one location, and let's be honest, that's what franchising is about. How do you stay on top of that? And I think to a point you have to use technology to validate and verify that your franchisees are as running as you hope them to be. And as I mentioned previously, before we were cut off, hope's not a good business strategy. So you can employ your franchisees to run your business, and you hope that through the whole process of engaging and bring them on board that they've got your values, but you really do, you can't just hope that they've got those values. You need to know for sure that that's being imprinted on the staff, so that you do have this work culture that is the essence of your franchise brand.
It's a really, really interesting point. Thanks so much, Daniel, for making this point, because what do you make of this, Danny? Or Daniel, it's getting difficult. What do you make of this, Danny, in terms of culture in larger businesses and as businesses have grown? Is it more challenging to get it right?
It's more challenging if we want to presume that culture is some sort of homogenous, it's the same everywhere. We've got a we are a company of 10,000 employees, so therefore we have one culture here. That's not how culture works. Culture is not a corporate thing. Culture is a human societal thing. Whenever you get 3 or more people, you get a culture. So knowing that you are going to get cultures within cultures within cultures and subcultures and this Russian nested doll of cultures, knowing that is completely natural and completely normal, and not to fight against it, and instead start with where are we going and what are the behaviors that are going to help us get there more likely. That then becomes codified into things like values or behaviors. On a side note, I'm much more a fan of identifying what the behaviors are rather than values. Values can be too subjective and too contextual. They're not always good. As a quick example, if you have a value of honesty, no one could say that's a bad value. Well, me and my partner put on a lot of weight during COVID. If she asks me how she looks in a dress that's unflattering, do I stay true to my value? So how do you want me to behave when my partner asks me how she looks is really the guiding stars that we need in our organization. So what are the behaviors that when the leader, when the franchisor is out of the room, what are the behaviors that are going to make that franchise still continue to run and be successful? That can be codified and scaled. And we shouldn't think that culture is something that you need visibility, you need presenteeism, you need to be there in order to be passionate about what you do. There's lots of sports fans that have never been to their sports team. They're quite happy watching it remotely through the TV or on apps and so on. They still have the behaviors that champion and challenge and show passion. So you don't have to be present, but you do have to have those expectations around what is it we're trying to achieve and what are the behaviors that we expect when we're in pursuit of that achievement.
Can I just echo that, Harvey? Again, Darren Adair quote, and he told me, and this is a one-to-one conversation, it's not how employees perform when you're with them, it's how they perform when you're not, which just sort of underlines exactly what Danny
Who leads when the leader is not in the room, which is most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the fact there, Danny, that you spoke about behaviors that they can be scaled, because they are more concisely identified than a value. So I like that. As I say, Daniel, great comment. Thanks for getting involved. We got a few more coming up from Tim, from Penny, from Simon, and from Steve Barrett. Let's welcome Steve Barrett to the show. Steve, welcome to the Franchise Show. Thanks for joining us. Steve's put factoring in lost productivity and high attrition, the impact on profitability is massive, much higher than 20%. I'm a Gallup strengths coach. Yeah, I mean, this is calling back, Danny, to what you said after Neil revealed that stat that it's a stat that's likely higher than that. We took a sample set of data here, but the message here is that work culture can have a positive or negative effect on the bottom line. And often businesses and franchise businesses are a bit guilty of sort of putting your numbers, your finances, your revenue, your profits in one kind of pillar, and then you've got your kind of what work feels like and your culture and the other things separately to that, right? Without connecting those two, which why it's such an important question to ask. I often used to say to franchisees, when they were talking about their people, that if they can really start to understand their people, understand what they want from their lives, really get to know them, they will start to want to work. My oldest stepson, he said something really interesting. Actually, he was working at a pub, and it was a chain pub, and he wasn't having a good time there, and he didn't want to go in. If he felt a bit ill, he wouldn't go in. He called in sick. Then he got himself a new job, and it was I think it was an independent pub, but they treated him kind of like family. Now, he was ill, but he really didn't want to go into work. And his mum said to him, "Look, just take the day off." He went, "No, I don't want to. They're good to me," right? And it made me think, this is real stuff. This makes a real difference to people, and to these things that can be quantifiable and easily measured. Great comment, Steve. Let's have a look. We've got, as I say, comments coming up from Simon, from Penny, and from Tim. Let's take one from Simon. Simon has put, has the shift in franchising culture over the years created its own problems for the industry? This is an interesting one. I mean, culture is a moving thing, is it not, Danny? Does it stay static, or is it
absolutely not? No, it constantly evolves. If you're at, I use a lot of pub analogies. I don't want to sound like I'm alcoholic. Maybe I have non-alcoholic drinks. I don't. But if you're in the pub with 3 friends, when another person joins, the culture will change, the conversation will change, behaviors will change. In fact, if you're with 5 friends at a table and a 6th person joins, what you'll tend to find is you'll split into 2 groups. There'll be 2 conversations going on. So culture constantly moves and shifts, but it is broadly stable over time, which is why this might be a good place to introduce climate. So climate, when we're talking about work, is how does it feel today? So and culture is how does it feel generally over time? So culture takes time to change. You can change climate instantly. If you change your leader, change your manager, bring pizzas in for the day, you get a change in the vibe of the place. That's climate. And people often confuse the two, because if we do fun stuff and treat people well and tell a few jokes and let people finish early, and then we mistake climate for culture. Culture is the long term. When that stuff's not going on, what's work really like? So to come to the franchise culture changing over the years, it has changed over the years. In my opinion, it's changed slowly because there are other interests that add to that kind of discussion around the pub table. So with franchisees, franchisors, you have people, and Tim alludes to this in his question, that you have people that bring their own purpose, their own fuel, whether that's financial investment, whether that's their own reason for becoming a franchisee or franchisor. But they'll bring their own reasons. Therefore, they bring their own agendas. So if you're not clear on the expectations of what we are trying to achieve as a franchise or what we're trying to achieve as an organization, then people do what they feel is right. And what people feel is right is driven by their own lived experience, their own biases, their own agendas, etc. So as franchising has become more inclusive in terms of anybody can kind of get in, everybody can have a piece of the pie, then yes, that's going to make it more complicated to establish what are the norms that are going to help us be successful. So that felt like a too long didn't read, but yes, it's the short answer.
No, brilliant. If you have just joined us today, this is the Franchise Show, and today we are talking about franchise work culture with the lovely Danny Wareham and Neil Newman. It's been a fantastic conversation so far, albeit with a slightly stuttered start, perhaps, but we're all good now. We've got some great comments coming in. If you are here, please pop in a comment. We've got about another 15 minutes left of the first part of today's show. One thing I did want to say is we have an extra little cheeky QR code that's sitting up on the left-hand corner today, and that's for the lovely Danny, who's taken his time to join us today. So please scan that one, and that's going to take you to his book and his lovely services if you're interested more about culture. So let's you mentioned Tim's comment. Let's get to Tim's comment. I put it up briefly, but it's a big one, so it's going to hide my beautiful face. Tim has put, how would you suggest creating an inclusive culture in a franchise organization which is governed by a very strong legal contract? And there is a very diverse group of individuals who have invested their money to have their own business and are often have different aspirations. Great question, Tim, actually. This is a really good point, because in a franchise business, you've got a lot of boundaries that you've got to work within. And you've got franchisors, often entrepreneurial, often wanting to do their own thing in some ways, but be supported in others. It's quite a unique culture, I would say, that you've got to create to keep things ticking along in the right direction. I was going to say to keep people happy, but that was the wrong expression.
Yes, yeah. Hopefully they'll be happy as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before it becomes the Danny show, is there anything that you'd like to add? Sorry, Neil.
No, that's fine. And to be fair, it is the Danny show because I'm not an expert in work culture. But what we're trying to do is underpin everything Danny says by collecting evidence, as I say, to substantiate whether or not your business is or does have the right work culture, and know when it doesn't. That's the whole point. So whatever Danny's advice is, go with it. But what you need to do is check that whatever Danny's advised you is actually working. That's the point. That's the whole point.
That's very lovely of you.
Absolutely. And quickly before Danny goes, we've got the QR code up still for that particular quiz. Have a look at it, because the idea behind this, and the reason that I love having Neil on the show, is because this is about asking these questions. If you think to yourself, if you've got a franchise business and you're thinking, what's my culture like? You can start asking some questions. What do our franchisees think of us? You can ask these questions, and you can regularly ask these questions. And as you can see when you scan it, it takes 30 seconds, 60 seconds, doesn't matter. It's not taking a lot of time to get regular snapshots that give you some really valuable information.
That's right.
Please
Thank
do
you.
that.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. We've got a couple of.
Shall I jump on Tim's?
Please do. Yeah.
Because this might feel like it's unique to franchises, but actually we get the same issues anywhere where you have large groups of people. So in a corporate environment, you have this where the sales team have one view, the customer service team have another view, the IT team have another view, and then within your sales team, you'll have different sales teams that think they should work in a different way. So you have that kind of Russian nested olive culture within culture within culture. The question always comes back to, what are the behaviors that are going to make us successful? So inclusion for me is about how can you be you? And some people will bring different lived experiences and different forms of diversity, not just protected characteristics, but different forms of diversity, including their motives for being part of this journey. Some people will purchase the franchise because they want to retire at 40 and spend their life traveling the world. Others just want to retire at 60 and spend time with the grandkids. Others just really enjoy coffee and want to get closer to the coalface. But everybody will have slightly different reasons for being there, exactly the same as they would if they were in a project management team. The question is not about where are you from and what do you bring. It's where are you heading? What's that North Star? What you're contributing towards? What are you trying to achieve? And then after you have that bit, what are the behaviors that are going to make that more likely to happen? What are the processes that are going to make that more likely to happen? What are the regulations that are going to make that more likely to happen? And some of those things might be imposed by a third party. The same as if you're in a corporate world, you'll have HR that have a lot of things that are in the employee handbook that say you have to do. The same as when you're in a franchise, you'll have things that you have to do because that's the franchisor's guide rails. So again, my advice would be to focus on what are we trying to achieve? What's that vision? What's that North Star that we're heading towards? Because if you don't have those underlying motivations for people being part of the journey, will slowly start to move people onto different courses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. One thing I was going to check, Neil, did we have anything else on that particular quiz?
Yes,
we've got about 10 minutes left. We've got a couple more questions in there, but let's have a look at, I think, the last remaining one or two that are left.
Okay, so quickly, one is how do you implement and maintain a good working culture? We offered a range of answers, from regular meetings to staff appraisals to anonymous check-ins to team building. Now, I think most of it's distributed. What I was surprised with looking at the data was the anonymous check-ins was only 15%.
Okay.
And from talking with my customer base, some of them say, but you do know who they are, don't you? Right? No, we don't. It's completely anonymous. That is the point. Anonymity breeds honesty. Yeah, it is funny, isn't it?
I want to know who's responsible for this blame culture.
Yeah, exactly. And we've heard of other people, and they say, well, they're asking us our department. There's only 4 of us in the department. You're like, no, these are all bad practices. If you truly want to, first of all, let me just say, staff appraisals, regular meetings, all of it, good stuff. Not saying don't do that. Absolutely not saying do that. What I'm saying is people, as Danny will tell you, people can operate or work differently when they're in front of somebody because it's their career. What they could say could affect their career. So they're not going to tell you the whole truth. And sometimes they're not going to tell you what you might not want to hear, which is this place is terrible to work, the management awful, whatever it might be. If you're a true successful business owner, you want to know warts and all what's going on, because if you don't, you won't be as successful as you think you're going to be, because you won't be able to do things about it. And that's where the anonymity comes into play. And then the pushback on that is people saying, well, they're anonymous, we can't do anything about it. Surely you can, because you can see what percentage of your staff are saying it. If it's 2%, probably just grievance staff. If it's 72%, you've got a problem. So whatever the area of the business that is, you can do something about it. But you demonstrate your listening, and then you can action that.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful question to ask. And this is partly what this is about when we're looking at culture, as to what questions do we need to ask to identify what and where our culture is right now, and where are we looking at going. And like Danny has mentioned, what behaviors, what processes do we want to put in place that makes that more likely. In terms of maintaining it, it's really interesting. Regular meetings, I think, is something that most people would agree with. The whole sort of secret shopper or the mystery shopper, and trying to sort of kind of find out what's going on. I don't know. It's an interesting one. You are perhaps getting that, that real view, but how is that looked upon by the network? And how is that affecting the wider culture? Is that it's affecting things like trust and all sorts of things. Let's have a look at this one by Penny. Penny has put contentious, but is there any one sector where you've identified that the culture leaves a great deal to be desired, and what quick fix can be applied to change it? Yeah, this is an interesting one. Is there more problematic sectors? It feels strange to think about it that way, because like you said, Danny, culture is a collection of people, and those collections of people exist in all sorts of different bubbles. But what do you make of this one?
So the cards on the table, the very first thing that came to mind was politics. So without getting into different political parties, culture is a strategic tool that helps you get from A to B. But you need to know where B is. You need to know where you're heading. Otherwise, you just end up doing what feels right. Okay. So if you don't have that vision, what's the difference you want to make in the world? What do you want to be famous for? And a lot of political parties across the spectrum and across geographies don't necessarily be clear or don't articulate what's that world they want to create. So as a result, they don't have a framework for what's the acceptable behaviors or not. So you end up with political parties recruiting from the same groups of people. When they're in the organization, they reward and recognize in the same way. And then when there's big societal complex issues to resolve, they don't have the cognitive diversity to deal with it. And that doesn't matter if you're on right, left, middle, doesn't matter, because they don't have that North Star. They don't know how do we get things done around here with intentionality. Other industries and other sectors that struggle are ones that don't have that. What's the difference that we make? What's that North Star? So a lot of in the legal world, there are some fantastic legal like solicitors and so on firms that are very clear on the difference they make, and they franchise out in a very specific way. So because they know what they're trying to achieve, it makes the decisions in their organization of should we onboard this franchisee or not? Should we onboard this client or not? Should we change this process or not? It makes those easier because you can ask a simple question of, does this help us get closer to that? Mm-hmm. So it's not an industry specific one, but wherever you don't know where you're going, that is where you're going to get. And the driving force behind that isn't everybody aligned heading towards the same thing and contributing differently. Instead, it's everybody contributing differently for what they think is the right thing to do. And that's where we get conflict and criticism. And, you know, behind every conflict, behind every moan, there's a wish. You know, we tend to focus on the moans and the criticisms, but there is a reason. People aren't inherently bad. They're trying to do the best they can. And if they don't have that direction, they bring their own with them. And that can be problematic.
I love that. You do some fantastic quotes, Danny. You should do a book of quotes. I don't know if they're all yours, but I like them. Let's have a quick look at the chat. Neil, is there anything more in that quiz that we haven't touched upon? We've got about 2 or 3 minutes.
Very, very quickly. First one, we don't have to talk about this, but I just thought I'd give you the stat. Could work culture be improved? 70% said yes. I'm going to leave that there. Move on to the next one. How much of your budget would you invest in a good working culture? This I find shocking when you talked about how much it affects the profits. 10% said they'd invest 20%. And in fact, 15 to 20 and 20 plus is only 20%. Everything below that, and 30% of people said 0%.
Hi.
Can I ask a simple maths question? Because I've asked this for years, but if you had a machine that made widgets and it was only operating at 18% efficiency, how much of your budget would you be investing in that machine to get it performance up?
It's funny, people can't relate the machine to a person.
Yeah,
it's a resource, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah. And part of it is 100% of businesses think culture is important, and 70% think they need help with it. From the quiz that you've done, but the perception of culture is either it's all right working here, you take the rough with the smooth, or it's a nice place to work and I like coming in, so it's kind of vibes and ambiguous, or you're paid to do that. That's your job, and you have to put up with, you know, the printer doesn't work properly and this process is a bit clunky, and, you know, Dave speaks out of his mind a few times, you know, demonstrates behaviors. Yeah, but the bottom line is, if you genuinely believe that your people are your best investment and also your most costly investment, and we know that only 18% of people globally are engaged in the work that they do, and we know that if you're disengaged, it spills into kitchens and classrooms and communities, why on earth wouldn't you be investing?
I think it's a really poignant way to end this particular section, because what we've got to remember, that if we've asked the question and we've identified something that's important, we've identified that we need help with it, the next step is to take that help and to do that thing. So hopefully people can listen to that and really look at their cultures. I mean, on the screen today, we've got some fantastic resources to help you with that. Let's finish with a couple more. We got one from Steve. He's put, having just taken on an assignment with a growing franchisee. He's corrected himself in another comment, so that's why I've changed that. One of my first moves, create a franchisee engagement survey. Ask and you will find out. Yeah, a great thing to do early on. Let's have a look. Final one from Katrina. I've lost connection again, and it won't come back. Not sure if this will go through. Well, it has. She's signing off and returning to her family. Good idea, but fantastic to have you with us, and thanks for being with us today. So we have now come to the end of the first part of today's show. This is, of course, the part where the screen will go black. Now, this time it's not because there's something going wrong with LinkedIn. It's because you're not allowed to see me without wearing a hat. So I now have this beauty on. Now, of course, this was made by the lovely Paul Murphy from PJ Murphy & Sons, bespoke British hatters. And if you'd like a beauty, contact Paul. He's also works for a franchisor. Now, this is a fun part of the show where we stop talking about work culture for a little bit and we start finding out a little bit about our guests. Now, Neil has been subject to this before, so we're going to let him off. I don't think Danny was last time he was on. And even if he was, it's time to ask him again. So, but Danny, you can get your own back on me afterwards, because you can ask me any question you so desire. Okay. But first of all, have you met anyone famous? Have you got a claim to fame or some sort of bizarre or interesting hobby? Something like that.
I have hobbies of rock climbing, extreme sports, and lying.
Lying. Very good. I get it now.
There you go. Thanks for playing. So I've met a few famous people. When I was 8 years old, I sang for Princess Diana.
Oh, wow.
That's probably the most famous.
Amazing.
Yeah, I used to be a choir boy. I was part of it sounds like a boy band, but I was in a group where the sort of top singers from each of the sort of church dioceses in the UK would come together in a kind of super group and then tour around, and we'd sing in cathedrals and at big events and things like that. So yeah, I sang for Princess Di in 1988, 86, wow. 86. Yeah, that's
well, we're going to have to get you to sing next time you're on.
It was a long time ago. I've had a lot of meals and a lot of shouting since then. I don't think my voice it really works. Certainly not in the karaoke.
Fair enough. Well, look, I did say as well that this is the part of the show where you can get your own back on me. Danny, you've been, as ever, an absolute joy to have on this, and real insights, I think, into culture again. So thanks so much. But you can get your own back on me and ask me anything you like. You can let me get away with this if you wish, or you can ask me anything, and now is that time.
Seeing as we've talked about what do you want to be famous for, where are you heading, what's the difference you want to make, what's that North Star? I know you're not a big New Year's resolution person, but what is your goal for 2027?
2027 we're talking. That's interesting.
It's the end of this year, but yeah, what's your goal? What are you heading for?
I think it's a great question. I think you can tell by the way I'm answering that 2027 I haven't thought about a huge amount. What I am going to say is I always was guilty of having about 30 goals on the go at the same time, right? I would have a chalkboard with my crazy ideas on them, and they would just spring into my mind all the time. And what I'd end up doing, because I didn't have a North Star, is I would end up doing a little bit of one thing, flitting to another thing, doing this, doing that. Same, you know, with my job. And I do tend to now have singular goals. My most recent goal was to launch the new QSR show, which has launched. And to be honest with you, I try and give it a little bit of a rest before I put another one up there. So I think my goals this year are to keep looking after my family. I do want to get a bit healthier. So
can I rephrase the question and maybe it'll be easier?
Yeah, you can. You can tell I was struggling.
Okay. Imagine yourself in January 2027.
Yeah.
What would it take for you to feel that you'd had a successful year?
It is a great question. I think that if people were enjoying
You'd be healthier and not sleeping on the couch.
I think if people were enjoying this still, and I'm still doing it, and people still like it, I would feel great about that it's still adding value. I think the same for the QSR show. And look, you know, I have a day job as well. And I've recently changed. So I've got plenty of goals there that I'm really looking to achieve. But so hopefully there's not going to be too many, because otherwise I'll get back to what I was doing before. But hopefully, yes, I can chalk off a few of those. There we go. Didn't turn my phone off. Classic.
That wasn't too painful, was it?
I'll tell you what, one of them is I hope I don't have any tech issues again.
You can't guarantee that.
No. Well, that's
the franchise show with AI. That's what you mean.
My goodness, no, it's not. No. It's not. It can't replace. Can it replace me? I wouldn't have thought so. Anyway, look, we have come to the end of today's show, and I'm going to have a beer, I think. Thank you all for being here, persevering with us, joining us for the first time, joining us for the second time today. And of course, I'd like to thank our lovely guests, Danny and Neil, for being on the show today and talking about a fantastic and very worthy topic. Next week on the franchise show, if I manage to make it work, we're going to be talking to businesses for sale, and we're going to be talking about franchise leads, quantity versus quality. And I think it's going to be an interesting subject. So please persevere with us. Join us next week. We will be live at 5:15. It works most weeks. And until next time, my fine friends, take very good care. Cheerio.